Welcome to the Longevity Man podcast, where we delve into the minds of extraordinary men who have embraced self-care and longevity. My name is David Ito, a holistic life and wellness coach. We discuss all things longevity specifically for men, from healthy lifestyle choices to expert advice and inspiring real-life stories that will help you take action towards a healthier and longer life. All right, hi guys. This is a new episode of the Longevity Man podcast. And today we have Coach John O'Brien, a psychologist, coach, and a personal friend of mine. And he has become a sort of expert in something called rudeness and incivility. Today we're going to be hearing all about it and how it relates with health, with wellness, and with longevity. Hi, John. Welcome to the podcast. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm a psychologist and coach by training based in Portland, Maine. I work with individuals and organizations that are seeking to create lower stress work environments, to ideally ignite employee engagement, increase productivity and strength profitability. I'm also the author of a recently released book, Rudeness Rehab, Reclaiming Civility in the Workplace and Your Home Space.
What is incivility? I think, most of us might think we understand what it is, but we're about to hear what it is exactly and why it matters.
There are three different types of incivility. There's the what you and I think of rudeness and incivility as interpersonal behavior. Rolling your eyes at someone or making a sarcastic comment is the interpersonal component. But there's cyber incivility, which is certainly increasing about what people do in email or in a chat in Slack or what they do on social media. There's also the third form of incivility, which is basically targetless, where it's leaving stuff for other people to have to clean up. So like in the work environment, it's leaving the photocopier jammed or no coffee in the coffee maker. And the stress that creates, there's no specific target, and yet it creates stress in people.
What is the relationship between incivility and rudeness and health and longevity?
Stress that we experience in our daily lives can have a number of negative impacts on us, both in the short term and the longer term. And the impact of rudeness, which occurs so frequently throughout our day, can build up the stress that we are experiencing. And if we are not managing it effectively, it in the long term can create chronic health problems, which actually can then potentially lead to issues with longevity.
What's the magnitude of this problem let's start with the US, but maybe even in other countries of the world?
First of all, just to maybe dig a little bit deeper into the stress response, that people probably think about stress as the fight or flight response, where sort of reacting in the moment to someone. And that's actually the fight, flight, freeze, or submit response in the short term about how people are responding in the moment. And that's often where people are experiencing the impact of someone else's rudeness, is that immediate response that we get. Then over time with the stress response, especially if it's chronic, in like whether it's your home, or in your workplace, or maybe with significant relationships with friends, that over time, the stress response goes from that fight or flight to what's called overfunctioning, where people seem to be doing really well in the resistance phase, but then face the bottom line of the long-term exhaustion phase, when people are more likely to get sick. And that can be in the short term with colds or flu, or sometimes in chronic situations, that stress leads to major health things, high blood pressure, diabetes, or cancer, other more chronic health conditions. So the impact that we see both in the United States, but also even worldwide, is that stress associated with incivility can create problems such as depression, anxiety. It can contribute to addiction. It can also contribute to, as I said, other health problems like high blood pressure, diabetes or cancer.
This is not a one-off rare situation. For so many people these days, this is a chronic thing. It's kind of part of their lifestyle, their the reality. Why is it that in modern times we're facing such high levels of chronic stress?
As you said, yes, it's not simply a one-off being rude to someone at work or a partner due to having a bad day. Although that sometimes can start a snowball in the direction of more chronic problems, but it doesn't just always mean one bad interaction means chronic problems. But it certainly can be. And when people are dealing with chronic stress over time, and whether it's stress from their home life or stress from the workplace, there are people, I think, are feeling squeezed more and more to produce with fewer resources in their work environment, to try to keep up with the demands of having family or a home life, and try to build all that. So I think that the stress that people experience in the longer term, and from also social media and reading things on social media and feeling like that they need to be able to keep up with other people who are getting ahead, or also all the negativity, certainly in our country, but it's not just in our country, the United States, it's other cultures as well, around politics and all that's happening sort of socially, I think is contributing to the chronic stress that then leads to the health problems people are experiencing.
I mean, I'm seeing that with my own coaching clients as well. I'm seeing it in my own life, like we're just torn in every single direction. We feel this, stress, pressure to work harder. Life is more expensive, inflation, digital media, social media, screen time. It feels like we just don't have a lot of resilience. And because of the context and the situation, our stress level is going up and up and up, and it's becoming the norm. It's becoming what people are used to, and maybe they don't have other expectations. It's like, this is how we live in modern days. But we're paying a hefty, hefty price. So you mentioned social media. You mentioned the negative impact it can have. Mm-hmm. But you also mentioned the workplace. Like, how does this problem relate to the workplace?
People show up at work, and it's not like they leave their personalities at the door or they leave their personal lives at the door. And so with all the stress people are experiencing in life in general, they bring that to the workplace. And depending upon the work environment, that environment will define what is and is not acceptable, or at least allowed and tolerated. And I hear all the time from clients about workplace environments that will tolerate rude behavior or abusive behavior, quite frankly, on the part of certain individuals because they produce a great deal. They're individual contributors that have a lot of credit because of what they offer to the business. And so the leaders kind of look aside to the rude behavior and the ways that they're treating others because of their contributions, but failing to see that ultimately that behavior really contributes to a toxic work environment. I think companies are recognizing the negative impact of, bullying or uncivil behavior now, and they're less and less likely to tolerate it. Certainly, people I've worked with over the years in healthcare and in the legal field were always telling me about some of the awful behavior that was tolerated on the part of people in those environments, and that's changing. But I think it's that people bring their stress to the workplace, and it manifests. And if there are not clear boundaries, then it actually can create quite a toxic work culture. I would just add that the same can be true. People, when they leave the workplace, they don't often leave work at work. And so sometimes they're bringing their stress home to their home space, and that creates stress and difficulties for their family and friends.
I'd like to go back, John, to the incivility at the workplace. I'm sure there's like the very obvious signs of it, but there might be more subtle yet very hurtful signs of incivility.
Okay. Well, I think certainly what I was speaking about before with victimless acts, where people kind of leave a mess behind them for other people to clean up. The message in that is the hidden message is my time is worth more than your time. So, you need to clean up this mess behind me because I'm so important. I have to go on and do these other things. That is, I think, a huge problem in work environments. I don't know how obvious this is, but I think sometimes people will be commenting in some communication medium like Slack, the chats that go on in that, or in Teams, and making negative comments there, or if someone's presenting in Zoom, making a negative comment in the chat, or thinking that you are making just a humorous comment and that it's fine, or thinking also that you are sending a direct message to one person in chat in Zoom when in fact you have sent a message to the entire Zoom room about someone. That I think also to your point about what are the other signs that people have been uncivil and or behaviors. One of the most impactful uncivil behaviors, I should say, is about non-responding. There's been research done that when you look at the impact of uncivil behaviors from one worker to another, that in fact direct rude behavior is of course problematic. But when someone sends an email, especially with a time-sensitive email, I need this information for meeting, and the other person just never responds, or responds with like 3 minutes before the meeting, perhaps purposefully or whatever, that experience of being ignored actually creates more stress than in fact being dealt with. Because at least when someone's dealing with you in a rude way directly, you know it. When someone just simply ignores you, it actually creates more difficulty, but it's not something that you would necessarily think would be that damaging.
You also mentioned before, how this goes beyond the workplace and it goes beyond social media. And this can go into personal relationships, into the home place, or home space, I should say. Can you give us more examples about that, please?
In people's home life, they often experience manifestations of stress like chronic sleep problems, which can, of course, come from a variety of places. But if people are busy ruminating about what's happened at work and how they're going to respond, or how someone's been treating them, that often interferes with sleep, create headaches. People can be so distressed that their appetite, either their appetite's poor and they're not eating, or they're eating a lot of junk food to comfort themselves. Obviously, it also can lead people to make choices around substances, where that they're self-medicating their stress with substances. So you can see certainly all of those things. People's relationships can suffer because someone comes home and they've dealt with difficulties in their workplace, and so they may pay less attention to their partner. They may be more withdrawn. They may be bringing that uncivil behavior home, and that then creates stress in their personal relationships. And as I mentioned earlier, I think there's the mental health impact that people sometimes fail to recognize, or they think of it as, well, I'm just experiencing stress, when in fact that stress can leak over into activating or worsening pre-existing anxiety or depression or substance use disorder.
What can we do about it? This is the key question, and I believe also the subject of your book, which I believe is doing really great and is receiving a lot of awards. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that in a moment. But what are the strategies to manage stress and to manage rude behavior towards others?
You have to think about, what message is my behavior sending? My advisor in my graduate program, whenever I would complain to her about another faculty member, she would sit and just listen patiently. And then after I finished, she would say, what part of this is about you? I never like that. But it is important to think about, like, okay, how am I contributing to this? So that's one piece, is managing rudeness in situations begins with a reflection of ourselves. Now, when it comes to dealing with the rude behavior of other people, that, I talk with people certainly about mindfulness strategies. There's the 4-step mindfulness strategy that I talk about in the book. Stop, breathe, reflect, and choose. That when we recognize that someone's been uncivil, or we are having a reaction like anger or irritation, to stop ourselves, stop, breathe, taking just a few deep breaths to sort of help us ground, then reflect what's going on, what might be happening, how might I respond differently to the situation, and then to make a choice. So I talk to people a lot in greater depth about that strategy, but also just in general about, and you know this from your work as a coach and as a yoga instructor, the power of breath. That being able to pay attention to what's going on for yourself physiologically, because when we feel attacked, we naturally get tense and want to fight back. And the idea is we can still protect ourselves or still advocate for ourselves, but it's a whole lot better to not be doing it from that tense place. And that's where breathing comes in.
Quickly, tell us about your book. Tell us when it came out. Tell us how it's doing. Tell us how people can access and get your amazing book.
Well, so the title of the book is Rudeness Rehab, Reclaiming Civility in the Workplace and Your Home Space. The reason I wrote the book was because of the growing problem of incivility that I've seen, and especially that really got supercharged during the pandemic. And the first part of the book builds the case for why incivility is the problem, and how it's, changing your behavior is not simply about, kumbaya and joining hands and being nice to people. Maybe it's that. But more importantly, that there's a benefit for your own health if you are not reacting to others or acting towards others in angry or stress-induced ways, because that has an impact on your health and those of your loved ones. So I build the case for why changing behaviors away from incivility are important. And then part 2 really looks at internal skills that people can use, some of which I just mentioned. It expands on how you can apply those in environments where incivility has occurred. And then the third part of the book really looks at interpersonal skills for managing rude behaviors among others. And the skill of active listening is one that I'll mention. So, and I will just put in a teaser that there's actually a part 2 to this book that'll probably be coming out sometime, not 2025, but maybe towards 2026, that really is, it expands more on some of the mindfulness strategies that you can use.
We always talk about longevity, and we think longevity is nutrition and exercise. But wait, think again, social interactions. We don't live in a silo. We live with other people. And when those relationships are toxic, it creates stress. Stress has a biological effect on our bodies. That has an effect on our organs. And then inflammation, faster aging. Let's just say it like that.
Well, if people are curious to know more about the book or more about incivility, they can check out rudenessrehab.com. There's a website I've created there with some of the presentations that I've done, some videos I've created. So that's something around the topic of the book and around my expertise in incivility. My coaching practice is at activatesuccess.org. So if people are curious to know more about me and my work as a coach, they can check that out. I'm on Facebook at Rudeness Rehab. I'm on YouTube at Rudeness Rehab. And certainly people can find me on LinkedIn under my name. I think I'm easily searchable there.
John O'Brien. All right. So Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing all this super valuable information. I know for a fact, because I have read the book, that it is truly amazing. So I invite you guys watching this podcast to look into it. We need to take care of ourselves in all ways. That includes our social relationships, the environments, the people that we connect with. Super important for our health and our longevity, physical and mental.